China's UN envoy is saying that the Chinese are not responsible for the de-escalation of North Korea-U.S. tensions, that North Korea and the U.S. are. So former National Security Advisor to Vice President Cheney, John Hanna, and Hudson Institute military expert Rebeccah Heinrichs on how we get the Chinese to acknowledge that they might have a bit of a role here. I was surprised, though not totally shocked by that reaction, John. What they're more or less saying is, we can't control these guys. What are you saying? John?
Well, I think it's outrageous, Neil, that the Chinese are kind of playing this game with us. It is just now clearer than ever that the Chinese continue to indulge the North Koreans economically and politically, and have not done nearly enough to bring the kind of pressure to bear on that regime that they are capable of. And I think it's really high time that the administration begin to inflict a much higher price on China, both in terms of economically going after those banks and corporations that are facilitating billions of dollars of transactions a year for North Korea, as well as taking steps militarily with South Korea, with Japan, to increase our defense posture in Northeast Asia and to increase U.S. missile defenses that will protect against a North Korean launch, but inevitably will also protect us against China's nuclear missiles.
You know, it is pretty clear to me, Rebeccah, and you're the expert here, but I think that the Chinese have been stringing us along, and I'm wondering if our response is, we're going to get tough on these financial matters. They can always come back and say, well, you know, we own a lot of your debt. We can get tough with you. Do you think the American people are ready for what would amount to a pretty nasty financial/trade war where the price of goods could go up? And we get a lot of goods from China, a lot. But the patriotism involved in sticking up for this is such that Americans will accept it.
Well, this is why it's so important, I think, that President Trump just goes directly to the American people and explains it in terms that they can understand, which is why I actually don't have a problem with the president threatening China via Twitter, because that's a forum in which is very accessible to the American people. And so I think that that's important. The American people have to understand what it is we're dealing with. But again, North Korea is enabled by China. 90% of North Korea's trade comes from China. So it is China's problem. The United States has to make it China's problem to put pressure on North Korea.
But that would involve doing something that would be a potential economic sacrifice for us. That if we're going to get tough on them, you know it's going to be tit for tat, and they're going to start making life difficult for us. But you're quite right. The president would have to explain, be prepared for higher priced goods, be prepared for potentially higher interest rates. You know the drill, right?
I know the drill. The American people have to understand that this is a team effort. It's going to take the entire American people to understand that this is worth it, though, because we have got to get North Korea, the nuclear program, under control. And if we use military force, I mean, that is something that we don't want to have to do. It's going to be a massive, bloody, terrible tragedy if we do that. And so we have to use other means. The other thing we have to do, we have to flood the region with missile defense systems. China understands that. You know, under the Obama administration, whenever the president said that he wanted to put the THAAD battery, that's the missile defense system in South Korea, the Chinese opposed, and so we acquiesced and we didn't do it. No more. President Trump has to not only put THAAD, we have to increase missile defense with the Japanese, so in that region, but also here at home. And again, the Chinese are going to oppose that because they've been watching the Russians oppose that in Eastern Europe too, and the United States has acquiesced. We cannot do that any longer because now there is a serious missile threat coming out of North Korea.
You know, I found it interesting, John, that Nikki Haley, our ambassador to the United Nations, said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that it wasn't worth having another emergency UN session, that the time for talk is over. So obviously whatever we're considering on our own, maybe in concert with a few key allies, I have no idea. But what do you make of that she more or less said, we raised this with the UN just a couple of months ago, we're not going to go back there?
Well, I think she's certainly right that if we're just going to go back, have another toothless resolution, and allow the American people and the international community to believe that we're actually making any progress against this problem, I think we shouldn't partake in that folly, that exercise anymore. If the Chinese are really prepared to impose a complete economic boycott on North Korea, go after shipping, go after air transport, go after the oil exports into North Korea, that'll be a different matter. But we haven't seen that seriousness on the part of China, and we shouldn't allow them to hide behind these toothless UN resolutions that come out one after the other and have really no impact on the actual problem itself. That time has passed. I agree.
All right, guys. Thank you both very, very much.